and we're here today to talk a little bit about their coverage. To my immediate left is Tommy Roy, longtime producer. To his left is Dan Hicks, who's been with us for a while. On the play-by-play side, Rowdy Gaines, Mr. Swimming. And to our far left is a newcomer to the broadcast team, Michelle Tafoya, who everybody probably knows from her roles on Sunday Night Football and others. So I'm a little biased, but if you look at the broadcast team up here, I think this has to be one of the best broadcast teams in all of sports broadcasting across any event if you look at the talent up here. So let's take advantage. I'm going to turn it over to Tommy to make an initial opening statement, followed by Dan, Rowdy, and Michelle, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Scott. Well, we're thrilled to be back here in Omaha. This is a fantastic sports town, and for us in general, the logistics of being in this building and being close by is just off the charts good. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I understand they were one of the candidates to possibly host this event, and I was very happy that it came here instead. So, this is my fourth trials that I've had the opportunity to produce, and we're really looking forward to Rio as well. For us, the Olympic swimming, it's a special, coveted assignment. Dan and Rowdy, this is going to be their sixth Olympics together. Michelle, who's the absolute best reporter in the business, is joining us for the first time for the trials and the Olympics, but she was with us last summer in Kazan, and that was an invaluable experience for all of us. We have 22 cameras here. Two of them are underwater. One of them is a tracking camera that goes the distance, plus we have another one at the finish line for the touch. We have super slow-mo to analyze the stroke. We have an X-mo to show the finish. And then a new device that we have this week is called the Dream Catcher. Appropriately enough, it's used on Sunday Night Football and on our hockey coverage. And as we all know, the race for first and second is interesting, but the one that really matters is the race between second and third, because it's only the top two that go on to Rio. So this device can zoom in on the second place finisher as they touch the wall and come back out, and then zoom in down on the third place finisher. And if they miss going to Rio by this much, that'll be documented. You know, a lot of times if they were in lanes 4 and 5, we'd be able to show that. But a lot of times this race between second and third will be in between 2 and 7. So that's why we have this device, and I think it'll be very effective. But for us, the most important and compelling part of our coverage is capturing the emotions of the athletes that make it to Rio and those that don't, and their families and their coaches, and that's where most of our equipment is dedicated to showing that. One little quick story. My daughter Kelly was here last time volunteering for USA Swimming, and her job was to be in the back and keep track of the athletes that had made it to Rio so that they could bring the athletes back up for the medal ceremonies. And so when the whole the whole session was done, the trials, and we were flying home, she said to me, she goes, "Did you know that Michael Phelps came up and congratulated every single athlete that made the team?" And I said, "What? You're waiting to tell me this now?" Now, I couldn't get too upset because she was only 14.
And she's your daughter.
But the bottom line is that's, you know, those kind of moments is what this is all about. So we've actually added an extra camera now to be here in the back so that not only we capture the emotion, you know, up on the deck, but then when they come back downstairs and they're greeted by their teammates and friends and family members, that we'll have that as well. All the prelims are being streamed live, every single heat on NBC Sports app. We have 7 prelim sessions that then air later in the day on the NBC Sports SN, and then 8 consecutive nights in prime time. 7 of those are on NBC, 1 on NBC SN. So we're thrilled, and for some of the storytelling, I'm going to turn over to Dan.
Thank you, Tommy. It is a real privilege to be back here, not only working with the best live sports producer I've ever worked with, and I'm pretty much attached to the hip to Tommy Roy, and not only Olympics, but did speed skating with him in the Winter Games, and now doing several swimming Olympics, and then all the golf we do. It's just great to work with him. We got a pretty good schedule coming up. We've got this obviously for the next week and a half or so, and then we've got the Open Championship after we get back from Omaha and catch our breath, and then we go right to the Olympics. So it's a dreamlike summer to do 3 events like that. And then we've got the Ryder Cup. We could go on and on, but yeah, Ryder Cup's a little bit later on. But it's a great year for NBC Sports, and just hearing Tommy talk about all the coverage plans, it's just amazing to see where these Olympic trials have come since Rowdy and I started doing it back in the dark ages. Back in '96, we did our first trials, but it has a lot to do with the guy that's going to be following us in this press conference, Michael Phelps, and it just has a lot to do with what the Olympics are all about. I have a chance to do a lot of different sports, but there is nothing like the Olympics, and there's nothing like this event, because the pressure that we see every 4 years of all of these hundreds and hundreds of athletes that come here, and then you get them up on the blocks in prime time on NBC, and you're either going to see that dream come true or you're not. That's just as good as it gets in sports broadcasting and what we do. So it'll be an obligation for me to tell the stories of the newcomers coming up, reiterate the stars that you guys already know about and that the public kind of only gets reintroduced to every 4 years. So it's important to not assume that everybody knows who Tyler Clary is or Connor Dwyer is or whoever that may be. So you have to keep in mind that it does come every 4 years, but it sure is a blast to introduce all of these personalities each and every 4 years. It's really has been the highlight of my career, doing Olympics swimming and working with this guy, Rowdy Gaines, the greatest ambassador the sport has ever seen. So I'll turn it over to my man here right now, Rowdy.
Thank you, Dan. I want to reiterate what Tommy just said a little while ago, the fact that Omaha is such an amazing city. And somebody asked me the other day what was special about Omaha, and obviously what USA Swimming has been able to do to turn this facility into a true swimming complex, but it's the people of the community that we noticed. We walked away on our way over here. Michelle was talking about how nice everybody was, and people were opening the doors for us, and they didn't know who we were. It was just really nice to know that the people of the community have gotten behind this event. Each and every Olympic trials, 3 in a row now. And like Dan said, there's nothing like the Olympic trials. I lived it in 1984. There's no more pressure for 99% of these athletes. There's no more pressure than the Olympic trials. It's a lot more pressure packed than the Olympic Games even. Because once you're an Olympian, you're an Olympian forever and ever. There's no such thing as a former Olympian or a past Olympian. So to have that feeling is so incredibly special, and it's so difficult in our country. You'll see a lot of events, maybe not a lot. The rest of the world is certainly caught up with us in many ways, but there are going to be some events where the man or woman that gets third in an event would potentially win the bronze medal or have a chance to win a medal in Rio, and they won't even go to the Olympic Games. And that's how good our country is in the sport of swimming. It's been number one for 60 years for a reason, and they have built that tradition of excellence here. I really think that we are in the golden age. We were talking about it at dinner last night of swimming. It really is. I can't remember, at least in my lifetime and when I was a kid watching swimming, obviously we had Mark Spitz in 1972, but 4 bigger names in the sport of swimming ever together that swim at one time. Obviously we know about Michael and his story, but when you talk about first name bases with Missy and Ryan and Katie, and then an incredible supporting cast with any other Olympics, it would be headliners like Nathan and Natalie and Tyler and Matt, and the list just goes on and on. It's just it's an incredible time to be a swimmer in the United States, and I mean this with all sincerity. I'm so proud and humbled that I can be a part of it again. And like Danny said, we just have the best team. I just sit back in amazement and see what Tommy and his team do. If you guys could only know what these guys do, and they live. I mean, this guy's here like 18, 20 hours a day, and most of his staff are here constantly, 24 hours a day. I mean, they're working day in and day out to be able to bring the best pictures and the best stories to the American public. And having a chance to work with Danny for 24 years is, I can't even begin to put in words the kind of mentor and the kind of friend and the kind of partner he's been over those 24 years. I don't do this for a living. I just call swimming. I don't know what I'm doing, I just love swimming. And to be able to be with a pro next to me is just unbelievable. And having a chance to work with Michelle last summer, I told her last night, when I watch her on Sunday Night Football, I sit around with my family, and my family's sitting around, and I'm sitting there. I go, I know that lady. I know that lady. And they all go, no, you don't. They believe that I know Dan, but they don't believe I know Michelle. So it's really a thrill to work with her and have her be a part of our team as well. So we're very excited about everything.
I went to Kazan last summer with this group. It was my first introduction into swimming, and in terms of this level. And it was such a great learning experience. And a couple of things that I learned is that Tommy Roy's got it all together. Just listen to him. Dan Hicks, I would listen in amazement because we would all three of us sit together prepping for each day. We all had the same amount of information. We all knew who the names were. But to hear Dan call a race was mind-blowing to me. Like, how is he doing that? He's exceptional. Rowdy has been so fun and so generous. He's got this wealth of knowledge. And I remember questioning him on something last year, and I'll never question Rowdy again. But they've all been so generous in helping me out. Someone asked me earlier, is it overwhelming to walk into a brand new sport? And I said, it's fun because the learning curve is so steep again. And I was up last night studying, reading, taking notes, and I thought, God, this is so fun because you're just immersing yourself. What I walked away from Kazan remembering, and I flew home, and anyone who would listen, I said, you may not know the name Katie Ledecky now, but you're going to know it like you know the back of your hand by the time we're finished with Rio. I was blown away by her dominance, and, as Rowdy said, the age range and the depth that we're seeing in this sport is really quite something. It's remarkable. And so I haven't gotten to cover Michael Phelps yet, and I'm really, really excited about this. I covered everyone else last year at Kazan, but this is going to be fun. He was down in San Antonio when we were in Kazan, and he was doing all kinds of things that were making us go, oh, this is going to be great. So very, very excited to be part of this group and this event.
We'll take questions now. Just raise your hand, your name and affiliation, and to whom your question is directed, please. So we'll start with Pat right here.
Thank you, Pat Forty from Yahoo Sports. I've touched on this a little bit with Dan and Rowdy, but I'd like to hear from you guys what makes the chemistry work so well between you for this long.
Good question. Because you can't force chemistry. But first of all, Rowdy is one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. He's one of the nicest people you could ever meet in your life. And we've all that have been in this business for a number of years have worked with people that don't necessarily are not necessarily your favorite people, for whatever reason it may be. So Rowdy is just the best, one of the best people I've ever met. And aside from that, I have never been with anybody that's had more passion for what they do, for the sport that they're a part of. He's just the greatest ambassador the sport has ever seen. And so for me to work with a guy who just absolutely can't wait to get to the pool to talk about what's going to happen in that session, I mean, that's like a dream come true. And we work a lot of long hours. I mean, I've seen Rowdy sprawled out over an air mattress in a voiced-over room in Sydney, Australia, every single hour of the clock. And we get him up, after maybe an hour nap, and he's got these bright eyes, and he's ready to go call another race. And that's something you can't fake. So I also have a passion for what I do, too, and I love people that love being the absolute best they can at it with a great work ethic. And he's all of the above.
Well, I mean, Pat, I know that you understand what I just said about Dan, and it's just so true. I think Dan's right. You can't fake it, and I think that friendship definitely comes over in the booth. And that's a given, right? Our friendship is. I mean, you know about that, but he's just the pro's pro, man. The guy. I've never seen a guy prepare like he does. It's just unbelievable. Like Michelle said, he's the first one there, the last one to leave. I sit back in amazement on some of the things that he's able to do in the broadcast booth. And I will tell you on behalf of both of us, it's really also a lot about the team around us. I mean, the people that Tommy has put together and what he's capable of doing, it really helps us too. Mike Unger is as most of you know, is somebody that we couldn't live without. And a lot of the support that we get from USA Swimming is just incredible. Everybody from Chuck Welgus to Frank Bush on down has really helped us as well. And it just helps in our preparation, the ability to go to spend some time with a team like we're going to do in Atlanta. Those kinds of things really help us, I think, together in the booth. But it's definitely a team effort. And again, Dan's taught me a lot about, I have a hard time shutting up, and he's very good at saying, okay, Rowdy, we don't need to get excited on this preliminary race where nobody really cares about. So just take your time. Let's wait till we get into it. So those kinds of things, like I said, he's a huge mentor of mine, and it really has helped me a lot.
Pat, I would add as an observer, seeing them for the first time in a room, they both have great senses of humor, and I think that matters a lot when you're working those kinds of hours and you're digesting that much information. And so they have a really fun time together, and we can all joke. I remember we were sitting in the room and we kept talking about the 50 back, the 50 back stroke. And we started singing it 50 back, like to Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake. It was very funny to us, but we started making up all our own lyrics. 50 back, ow! We were just all rapping in the room, and we just had a great time. And so I think that sense of humor each of them possesses makes it a lot of fun for them too.
Nicole Auerbach, USA Today. Rowdy, considering all the swimmers that you've seen and been around, where does Katie Ledecky's dominance over the last few years and like what we're hoping to see here kind of stack up?
Hey, Nicole, I've even during Michael's heyday, I've never seen such dominance. I mean, obviously Michael dominated, but not by the amount of time, just from the clock standpoint that Katie has. Now, again, her events are longer, especially when you get to the 800, but it really is, I'm at a loss for words sometimes when I think about what she's been able to do the last 4 years. We all know about the fact that she's basically been undefeated over the last 4 years in every major event that she's swum in. But it's the way that she goes about it, that's much more impressive. It's not so much what she does in the water, but it's the humility that she has. It's the perseverance. It's this quiet strength of character that she has. I just had breakfast with her parents this morning, and you get a sense of where that comes from. She's just a really good kid. I mean, she's still a kid, obviously, but she's just a really sweet kid. And I know that doesn't really answer your question, but to me, I think that tells a lot about how she has this entire thing in perspective. And I think that really has helped her in training. She loves to train. She loves to be out there every day and loves that feeling. And you don't get that a lot. I mean, I was talking to Bruce the other day, and Bruce said, she likes to practice. And that's not true for all kids. It certainly wasn't true for me. I liked the end product, but I didn't like practicing. I loved the way I felt afterwards, but not during. And she likes that feeling during. And I think that's really helped her.
Karen Kraus, New York Times. I have two questions. First for Dan. You cover golf, you cover swimming. Two diametrically opposed approaches to this Olympics. You have golfers dropping out like flies, swimmers making supreme sacrifices to try to get there. How do you reconcile those two scenarios?
Well, I think every case is absolutely personal. I think it's a real personal decision. Some of the golfers that have dropped out have talked about how they've conferred with their families, conferred with their doctors, and where they are in life, either newly married or having families. And so I'm not going to begin to, criticize anybody for not going to the Olympic Games because of what's happening with the Zika virus in Rio. And you have to also remember the golf competition and the swimming competition are just talk about on opposite ends of the spectrum. We're going to be in this environment where we're not going to be outside, on a golf course for hours upon hours upon hours. So it's going to be a very controlled environment. Nonetheless, it's still a risk. It's a real issue. But I think golf and swimming from that aspect couldn't be more different. And I'll say this, I've been asked about it a lot. Every Olympics we get to, there's some issue that is the dominant subject. And again, this is a very real health risk. But I think hopefully, and I think by the time these games are over with, I really hope that there's not going to be anything that sticks out as a story beyond the great competition, which usually every time takes over the whole spirit of the 17 days of the games. So, it's I'm not going to be involved with the golf. I'll be obviously keeping one eye and one ear on it because I think it's going to be really exciting to have golf back in the Olympics. But I think they are two different worlds, golf and swimming, the Olympics.
Okay. And then this is for Rowdy. From all that you've heard and read, do you think swimming is cleaner in 2016 than it was in 1984 or not?
I don't know. I hope it is. I want to believe it is. But there's always going to be cheaters, Karen. Yeah. There just is. We can't hide our head in the sand about it. But I was talking to a reporter the other day about Katie, and he asked me that same question. Because of her dominance, what do you think? And I would stake my life that Katie Ledecky is clean. And I would stake my life that every athlete swimming in these Olympic trials are clean. Just because I believe our country is that way. We live by a different law here. We have to have an understanding that we have a life after swimming. It's not that I blame some countries. Forget about swimming. I'm just talking about in general, But when you're from a third world country, for example, or you're from a poor country, and your whole life revolves around supporting your family, and you're making whatever it is, dollars per day, and then you have a chance to make thousands, sometimes millions of dollars by winning, you sometimes have to do what you have to do. I'm not condoning it, but I think that you have to look at some of the dynamics behind the reasons why people do what they do. But it drives me crazy, Karen. It's the one thing that I think could destroy the Olympic movement is drugs. And we have to continue to be vigilant in trying to stop it. And I think we are. I think the IAAF made a huge decision the other day when they banned the Russian athletes. I know there's been some talk about letting some in, but at least they made a stand, right? You have to start somewhere, and I think that's one thing we've got to be able to do in the future is make sure we keep this sport clean, not just swimming, but all sports. And I think we made a lot of headway with what's happened the last couple weeks.
And just real quick to Tommy, how much will what's going on with the Russian situation, with the systematic state doping situation and all of that, how much will that play into your coverage?
I don't think it'll play into any of it here for the trials, certainly. And once we get to Rio, that's more of an overview subject that the IBC and Costas and group will be dealing with.
So this question's for Dan and Michelle. Dan, you've covered swimming for a while. Michelle, only a year. But what have you seen from these athletes that really surprises you? Dan, every time you're here, and Michelle in Kazan, what really has stood out about swimmers, about the sport of swimming that, surprises an outsider?
First of all, I think the personalities that are involved in swimming are really fun to report on. Not that you get into a routine with other sports and their robots or anything like that, but I don't think there's any other sport. There's no other sport that I've covered that has an more eclectic group of personalities and characters. Across the board, diverse, all backgrounds, all sorts of people. And from a storytelling aspect of what I do, which is my big responsibility, there's no more fertile ground for a broadcaster, from what I do, than what the swimmers have presented us and me the opportunity to talk about through all these years. Because, you know, it does take a certain mentality, I think, to stare at that black line and figure out a way to be motivated. And like Rowdy said, he wasn't a practice, swimmer, but at the same time, he wanted to be the best he possibly could, and there's no other way than to get in that pool and rack up the meters. So I got a great respect for what they do, and I think the closer I've been able to cover it and the more I talk to Rowdy and all the experts in the field, it's a pretty exceptional sport. But I just love the personalities and the characters. I mean, Gary Hall Jr. from years ago, to what even Michael Phelps has gone through and his incredible saga and story that's unfolding, is really been a pleasure to talk about, introduce America to at the Olympics and trials. And so that's been the most fun for me is the personalities that we're going to introduce more of the same this week.
Two things jump out to my mind. One is how accessible the swimmers are and the coaches, really. It's a far cry from professional sports. And that's not to slap anybody in professional sports. They've got a schedule, they got the thing. But I think what these swimmers understand is they get a limited amount of time to tell their story, to promote their sport, and to talk about this. And so they are great about just being accessible and talking to you as much as you want. The second thing I think that most people, you watch a race and you watch the excitement at the end and they're tired. But I can remember in Kazan, and I think it was Missy, and probably multiple people would come over to stand and do the interview. And I remember Missy once standing there, she just got out of the pool and she's going, ow, ow, ow. And I said, are you okay? And she goes, my whole body hurts so bad right now. And I had taken that for granted, what they put their entire head-to-toe body through from a musculoskeletal perspective to compete at that level. And I was suddenly like, wow, she's in pain. They're in pain when they're done. And that hadn't occurred to me before. And I think that's something that people hopefully will get people to appreciate more.
Child and then Dave.
This is a two-part question for Rowdy. First of all, when you watch Michael this week, what will you be looking for? What are you most interested in seeing as a longtime observer? And then the second part is just what individual race are you most excited to watch this week?
Well, I think Michael will certainly try to fine-tune a few little things. When I talked to him in Santa Clara, he said, I just want to make sure I'm doing the little things right. I know that I will be at my best physically, emotionally, mentally, but I need to make sure I do, I need to make sure I get off the blocks well. I need to make sure I do my turns right. Those kind of little things are very important to him. So I think I'll be looking at the little things technically for him, how his underwaters are. But, I'm bringing my wife and one of my daughters to make sure they get to watch Michael Phelps swim, because even though 4 years ago...
You said that 4 years ago.
Even though 4 years ago we kind of said, maybe this wouldn't be it. And
We're not going to do that this year, by the way.
no, I think we can say.
You think we can?
I think we can say this will be it.
All right.
I'd be shocked if he did it again. But again, to kind of appreciate what he's given the sport over the last 16 years. He's changed the sport more dramatically than anybody else in history, or any entity in history. And I think that for this week, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy this artist and what he's been able to do. But for me, from a technical standpoint, I'm just going to look at the little things, see how his stroke looks, make sure he's riding high on the water, those little things from an analyst standpoint. But from a personal standpoint, it's going to be a real joy to watch him. I think for me, the two races that really stand out for me, and they're kind of unusual. Obviously, Michael's races and Katie's races, those are givens. The men's 100 backstroke, for some reason, I'm really, really excited about. This, like I said, this is a case where you've got three, and of course there's going to be more, but three really huge names in the 100 backstroke in our country. And one of them is not going to make the Olympic team, at least in the 100 back. And you've got the Olympic gold medalist, you've got the guy that's the fastest time in the world this year, and then you've got Ryan Murphy, who I think is going to break the world record this week. So you've got all three of these guys, and it's just going to be an incredible battle. And the 100 backstroke is another event that I think we've medaled in every single Olympic Games. I have to check that back, but I think every single Olympic Games in history, we've medaled in the 100 back. So
Rowdy, medal is not a verb.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was going to
Medal
ask,
is not a verb.
are we allowed to say that now?
No, sorry. Has won a medal in the game. So point is the men's 100 back, and then the women's 200 freestyle is going to be the other one that I can't wait to see. I think Mike Unger was telling us the other day that, you've got the Olympic gold medalist, the world champion from 2013, the world champion from 2015. And again, one of them is not going to make the team, individually anyway. So those two are the races that I'm really looking forward to the most.
Last question.
Hey, Dave Sheinin from the Washington Post. Also a question for Rowdy. Could you compare and contrast this event from when you first encountered it to what it is today? and to follow up on that,
were you there in '84?
No, I look like I was, but no.
Dude,
is it possible that the dual purposes of this meet right now to pick the Olympic team and also to be this spectacle and the Super Bowl of swimming, can they work at cross purposes at all?
What do you mean?
Could the one distract from the other? Could it be too much of a burden on the elite swimmers with this massive humanity?
Well, Karen had a great article on that this morning. I just read it, and it really, it personifies. It's true. But it personifies. We had an argument about this a couple months ago about whether or not this meet was too big. Absolutely not. It's not too big. Are you kidding me? This is a great chance. Caleb Dressel was like next to last 4 years ago. And I don't think if he had that experience, I'm not sure he would be prepared like he is today to make the Olympic team. I think that experience helped him tremendously. So what if they have to wait around for a couple hours? Big deal. Wait till they get to the Olympics, and have to do what they have to do at the Olympics. I think this is great. I think they should be 5,000 kids. Who cares? As long as they can put them all together. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for these athletes to be able to see what the big time is. For getting back to your quick question about '84, dude, there were like 400. Karen may know this more than I do, but there were like 400 people that qualified for those Olympic trials. Half the stands were full in Indianapolis. It's completely different. Not that it wasn't just as intense to make the Olympic team. I felt more pressure at the Olympic trials than I did at the Olympics, and I promise you, most of the athletes, not all of them, but most of them will tell you that the Olympic trials is a lot more pressure-packed than the Olympic Games when they even get there. Even the first-time Olympians will tell you this was a lot harder than the Olympics. And I think a lot of it's USA Swimming's fault. And the fact that when you walk out on the deck out there and see that, oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable. It's our Super Bowl. I've said it before. We don't have a World Series. We don't have a Super Bowl. If my beloved Chicago Cubs can't do it one year, I can always hope they do it the next year. It's every 4 years. It's a long 4-year journey, and they deserve to have something like this. And as many as possible deserve that feeling to be able to swim at an Olympic trials. And I think it really helps our sport. I told Karen this, and I think that maybe swayed her a little bit on my side, and the fact that I think it really helps our sport grow when I get more people talk to me about their kids swimming at the Olympic trials and, they got to swim at the Olympic trials. They might make the Olympic team and everything. Just give them that hope, and that helps that sport grow. That means that person that swims at the Olympic trials goes back and tells those little 8-year-old kids, I swam at the Olympic trials. And they want to be like that kid that qualified in the Olympic trials, even though they got 83rd in the 100 backstroke. So I think it means a lot to our sport to have those kinds of numbers here. I kid about 5,000, but this 1,500 to 2,000 is a good number. And we can't help it if you set the times. Larry Herr set the dadgum times, and, blame him too, because we thought the times we wouldn't have more than 1,200, right? And the kids stepped up. They looked at the time and said, okay, I'll make that time then.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Appreciate your time. I was going to tell you to get in here and tell them to wrap it. Give them the countdown. 10, 9. We have Matt Grievers coming in now, and then Michael Phelps.